Let's talk about anxious attachment, abandonment, multi-generational trauma, specifically talking about the trauma in the Black community. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica Lang. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and on this channel I talk about all things trauma, attachment, brain healing. So if that is your jam, then go ahead and click the subscribe button down below and ring the notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. I really want to talk about multi-generational trauma, but I also want to just kind of talk specifically about my community, which is the Black community. Y'all know how much I love Dr. Joy DeGruy. Please check her YouTube channel. I put her info in the description box. I learned about her a couple years ago in a training where she talked about her poignant research can't speak English term she coined, post-traumatic slave syndrome. So basically this post-traumatic slave syndrome talks about, we have, Black community, ancestors have been brought to the Americas as slaves, chattel slavery, let's call it what it is, and how our ancestors kind of survived that, and that the behaviors and things that they've passed down, generation after generation, are actually unhealed trauma adaptations that we use even today. And so we call it culture, but really some of these things that we see, because she's done all this research for decades and decades, she's like visited different African countries and seen different, each region and each country and even tribes and all things, how they have done things, and a lot of the behaviors that exist within our community, the African American community here in the States, is quite different, and that the behaviors that you really see are for folks who have trauma. And so that's why I like her work so much, and I thought, okay, I really want to talk about this in the confines of the attachment relationship, and kind of those feelings of abandonment. So one of the kind of big things that she discusses is how, again, these are trauma adaptations. The behaviors are a response to living in this hostile world. And so if you go back to when my ancestors were brought here, right, they were considered property, meaning that the white slave masters could do whatever they wanted to do with their property, treated just like they were treated animals, but oftentimes a lot worse. And one of the things that was really prominent was that, unlike slavery in other parts of the world, just because you, the adult, were a slave doesn't mean your child was a slave. Well, no, American slavery changed that. Your child was a slave. And not only that, your child is the property of the white slave owners. And so they could sell off these children however they wanted to. And because the slaves were property, right, men and women, there was a lot of rape and sexual assault that happened. And so again, probably should have put a trigger warning. I'll go back and do that. If you really want to think about those things, you as a woman, one of the Dr. Joy DeGruy, like I said, she kind of coined the term post-traumatic slave syndrome. But recently I started reading the book Ain't I a Woman by Bell Hooks, and so she actually goes through like Black feminism, and she's talking about the history of being Black female slaves. That's jarring. Useful. We need to talk about it, but it's also just like when you actually read it and you think about it and you put yourself in that mindset, then you start to understand what these women are talking about when we talk about trauma and trauma adaptations. And you want to look at our community, and you want to say, well, Black on Black crime and all these pejorative things that people want to talk about, when what you're talking about is all this unhealed trauma and people not even recognizing that that's what's going on and how it's passed down. So anyway, back to what I was saying, got marginally sidetracked. So when I was thinking about attachment, what kind of sparked my brain and made me, want to kind of dive into this a little bit more is I was thinking about my own family, my clients' families, my clients and their families. the different research, the books I've read, Dr. Joy's work, Bell Hooks, her work, colleagues, all of it, right? When we look at, kind of our history, there's this interesting kind of phenomenon. Now, I'm being very general. It's not all Black families, but it's enough that, I could even see strangers on, like TikTok or something talking about these things, where there's this disconnection between parent, specifically mother and children, that I just noticed in our community. And as I was thinking about why that would be so, and kind of like how that shows up, I remember a few years back, I was actually running a group for Black women who were new moms. So like it was all about supporting them during the postpartum period. It was called Black Infant Mental Health. So I worked at that program, and there was like a whole curriculum. And when talking with these women, all of different ages, the topic of breastfeeding came up. Now, shouldn't be controversial, but it is. But a lot of these women, again, young, old, didn't matter. And when I say old, I mean like 30s. I don't think we had anybody in their 40s, but ran from like 20s to 30s. They were like, I want to breastfeed. And when they told their family members, or they, the nursing staff, whatever, they got a lot of pushback around breastfeeding. Pushback that ranged from like, no, you don't want to breastfeed your kid because they're going to spoil them, to like, if the baby had trouble latching or mom wasn't producing enough, lactation consultants were being brought in for these women. They're just like, oh, give your kid formula. And with that's obviously just plain old racism that we need to kind of work with from medical professionals. But in terms of family members who were like, no, why do you want to breastfeed? Something's wrong with you, da 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 da. A lot of these women, they would get very upset with it was usually their moms, but maybe it might be aunties or grandparents who also stated their opinion about that. But breastfeeding is one of the big ways. Feeding in general is a huge way you bond with your child, but we know that there's a lot of bonding that happens in breastfeeding. And so it made me think about, these older women who are like, no, you don't need to breastfeed, and shaming the younger folks for it. And using words about like spoil, I just, how many times have I heard that with relatives or my own family or with clients who say like, why are you picking up that baby? That baby's too big to be held. You're trying to spoil your kid. Spoil. What does that even mean? Right? And that I just heard like a lot of hurt and a lot of, why wouldn't you want to spoil your kid? What's wrong with that? What's this negative connotation about it? And as I kind of asked questions and got curious, just professionally, or like when I talk with family or whomever, it's a lot of fear, but also they didn't have that experience. So again, these are things that, we call it culture, but it's if you look back and trace it back, it's trauma adaptations. Because if you are a woman back in slave times, you might not have wanted kids, but guess what? They're gonna make you have kids. They're, forced mating. There was rape. There's no birth control. So you're gonna have a kid. And your kid is not your child, right? Like we think of today, like this is my baby. No, that's the property of the white slave master. And so as your kid he's constantly looking at this kid. If it's a girl, rape, that's what's happening. If it's a boy, money, I'm gonna sell this kid if it's good, right? So why would you be attached to your child? That your kid is going to be taken away. So that hurts. It hurts to see your child taken away. It hurts to see your child being sexually abused, assaulted, and you can't do anything about it because guess what? You're property. You don't matter. And yes, that happened during slave times, but it also happened after, during Reconstruction, during Jim Crow. Let's sit with that. It's uncomfortable, but that's the reality. Even to this day, Black people's pain isn't taken seriously. We've done a ton of research about that in the medical community, right? We don't need to rehash that. This is a hostile world for Black folks. This is a hostile country. And so, it's hard to be connected and that you can't protect, or you fear that you can't protect your child from the world at large. So there's some disconnection. But the world is not hostile in that same way, right? Yeah, we have police shootings and, there's prejudices, and we know kids get, our little preschoolers are getting kicked out of school left and right more than, their white counterparts, and security guards in school and suspend, we know all of those things. And those things are true. But in terms of kind of, that immediate, threat of, slave times, that part isn't there. But there's still a lot of hostility that we've prepared ourselves for, and that we're constantly as a community on the lookout for. And it affects our parenting, and it impacts the way we connect with our children. And I talk with a good friend of mine, and she has a daughter, and so we talk all the time about how this world is so hostile for our children. And so how important it is. I don't have kids, but she has a kid, and so she talks about wanting to be that loving space for her daughter, because this world doesn't care about her, but she's going to make home safe. And to be able to even do that, to recognize like, oh yeah, a lot of my parents' stuff was from their own fears, from their grandparents' fears, from their grandparents' fears. But I have to do things differently because this world is hostile. So I'm going to make my home safe. But that's going to take us as a community, us as individuals, to be real with the pain, which is hard. No one wants to sit with pain and the discomfort of our reality. But we have to do it because we're passing on trauma. Because it's our own unhealed trauma, we're passing it down. It's showing up in our in medical conditions. It's showing up in depression and anxiety and suicide and PTSD is trauma. It's showing up in other ways. And so I just felt the need to get on this video just to kind of talk about how that's perpetuated, and that we can be very harsh. And I hear, again, I spend probably too much time on TikTok, but once you go down that rabbit hole, it's a little bit hard to stop. But it's it's interesting. These are just, and also why YouTube is so good, because you get people's perspective, and you start to see, if you watch and hear from a lot of Black creators, people in America, the same type of messaging, the same type of family dynamics, right? Where and I did videos about like sexualization of children, and there's a lot of fear around that, especially in my community. Don't wear that, you can't dress like that, Uncle so and so's coming over, oh no, put some clothes on, you can't, because yes, there's very real fear on the world around men and sexual assault, stuff like that, but like not just that, but that people can just do stuff to you and there's no protection. There will be no justice around it. So you've got to protect yourself. So it's a way of trying to help your child be armed to fight in this hostile world, but not giving any kind of context or forgetting to be connected. I don't know what word I'm trying to use or phrase I'm trying to use, to the very real pain and the toll that takes both emotionally and physically and mentally on a person's psyche. The way that our sons, are not seen as little boys. They're always seen as older. Our daughters too. That's where you get a lot of that sexualization stuff. But with our boys, they're seen as aggressive. So what kinds of, how do we, I don't want to say stomp that out, but ways in which we try to protect our sons, right? You need to, get good grades. I mean, that's obvious. Everybody get good grades, but like the pressure to kind of walk the straight and narrow, right? Don't give them a reason to notice you in any way, because if they notice you, they're going to hurt you, kind of a thing, right? And we don't say that necessarily explicitly, but we do say that with some of our toxic behaviors. Again, unhealed trauma. The way we criticize our children, the way we, we withhold love and affection. It's what really made me think of doing this video is just talking with clients and, this shared experience of, I'm just a girl, so I just know the girl experience. So I don't know if Black males have this too. I feel like they do to a certain extent, but I definitely see it with the girls. You get to be about 10, 11 when you start to hit puberty. Maybe you get to be 12, but this is when it starts, right? About 10, 11. There, first off, a lot of in our community, there's not a lot of love and affection, kissy, huggy, any of that, sit on my lap, snuggle. Like, it's just not, I mean, we're getting better at it, but I've still heard comments, especially from older generations, like, why is your kid still in bed? Why is your kid, there's, your kid's too big for that. It's pretty much a big for, grow up, whatever. But about 10, 11, even if there is hugs and kisses, they start to kind of disappear. So that by the time a kid is a teenager, there's a lot less hugs. And sometimes it's just completely gone. You're not sitting on your mom or your dad's lap. You're not snuggling up with them in the bed. Again, it's not everybody, obviously, but it's enough that I could talk to different people from different SES and its socioeconomic backgrounds, and they will have the same experience. Why? Why is that? Let's get curious. We're not judging. Why? What's about that disconnection? What is the fear about being connected to your child that's there at play? That's how I see that. So I had a whole script, kind of went off of it. So I think I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't want to go and backtrack. Just felt the need to get on and just kind of talk about that. Really encourage you, whether you are a Black person watching this video or you're a white person wanting to learn more, be a better ally, learn from Dr. Joy DeGroo's work about post-traumatic slave syndrome. Read bell hooks in I, Woman. Really understand the Black experience. Try to understand that just because, slavery is over, we never got, our ancestors didn't get treatment for that. Your ancestors didn't get treatment for that, white folks. You still carry that. Just like we carry the legacy of slavery, certain things are passed down, y'all do too. And so there's no way we can move forward, we can heal until all of that stuff is addressed. And it's going to be sitting with a lot of discomfort, sitting with a lot of pain, but being open to hearing about other people's experiences. For my Black folks out there, parents, grandparents, single folks, whatever, I hope this video is a little bit all over the place just because I went off script. But what I hope that you get from it is just having a little bit of an understanding about maybe why your parents reacted the way that they did. Maybe have some compassion. You don't have to forgive if you don't want to, but also think about how you can be intentional about raising your own children and raising yourself, again, in this very hostile world. What kinds of things do you want to pass down? What kind of messaging do you want your children or yourself to have? How do you feel safe in your own body? Make your home an emotionally and physically safe space. How do you stay connected with your kids? How do you open yourself up for that connection? Just be open to do things different. And it might take a little bit of pushing back against family, but we've all got some unhealed trauma there that we got to work through. And it changed our DNA. We know that. That's epigenetics right there. But I'm not going to get into that because, this video is long enough. So I hope you guys like this video. I went off script. Hope it's still good. Please, if you like this video, hit the like button. Share your thoughts down below in the comment section. You can always also sign up for my email list if you want other types of content. You enjoy content like this. You want more blogs and freebies and things of that nature. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.